Looking at number 1 here, it's a word problem. I know you guys love word problems, but please remember your strategies. Strategy number 1 was underline the key information. So pause the video and underline that information. All right, so taking a look here, what I underlined, we have 2 different pizza companies, and it wants us to find how many toppings we need to order so that the pizza cost is the same for the 2 companies. So the question you need to ask yourself is there a total? All right, and the answer here is no, we don't have a total. And our total is usually on an end, so I'm just going to use Y here. Okay, talking about Palanzinos, so it costs $6.80 plus 90 cents for each topping. And we're going to have our X here with that 90 cents for each topping. Okay, moving on to the other equation, talking about Guido's, same thing. It does not give us a total cost, but it tells us it's $7.30 plus 65 cents for each topping. So again, our X needs to be with the 65 cents. So now that we have our 2 equations, we cannot forget to define our variables. So defining our variables here, we have an X, we have a Y. Our Y, we already said, was total cost, okay, because that's something that it didn't give us. That's why our Y is in this place. And our X here is going to be the number of toppings. All right, because in each of these it says 90 cents for each topping, 65 cents for each topping. The question is asking us how many toppings do we need? So our variables is really telling us what the question's asking us to find. All right, from here we now have our 2 equations. 2 different methods to go through and solve. You could graph them by hand if you really wanted to, get a piece of graph paper out. But I caution you with that because of the way your y-intercepts are here. My suggestion would be to do it in the calculator instead. All right, so let's bring up our calculator here and let's refresh on how to go through and actually enter things into the calculator. All right, so the first thing I did here was press our y equals, and we want to put in our 2 equations. All right, making sure that you have your x in the correct spot, making sure that we're not missing any decimal points anywhere. So once you have your 2 equations in, hit your graph button so that you can see the graph. And we can see where they intersect there. So we're going to go second, trace, go down to number 5, hit enter. It says first curve, enter again, second curve, enter again. It says guess, enter one last time, and we have an intersection of 2, 8.6. Right, so let's write that down so we actually remember what our solution is. But in a word problem, this is not enough anymore. I need units to go along with this. 2 what? 8.6 what? And this is where defining our variable is extremely important. Our 2 is our x value, our 8.6 is our y value. So if we go back to our variables, 2, x value is toppings. So this tells me 2 toppings. And then our y value was 8.6, and that's our total cost. So that tells me $8.60 for our cost. So making sure we actually answered the question, it wanted to know how many toppings needed so that the cost of the pizza would be the same. So I'd have to order 2 toppings, and that total cost would then be $8.60, which would be the same for both of them. Okay? If that doesn't make sense, please pause and go talk to Ms. Steele to make sure that you're understanding how that works. All right, and next, then we're actually going to skip problems 2 and 3, and we're going to come down to problem number 4. All right, so again, pause the video, and I want you to please highlight your key information. All right, so this is what I have highlighted here. And hopefully reading through this, you realize that, wait a minute, this one sounds different than the last one, okay? Because it is different than the last one. If you look here, we now have a total, okay? Monday, Joe spent $16.50. So let's put that in the total spot, $16.50. Right, he bought 10 cups of coffee and 5 donuts. So we're gonna have here 10x plus 5y. Okay, moving on to the other part here. When on Tuesday, again, we have a total. We have a total of $14.25. And then Joe bought 5 cups of coffee and 10 donuts. So 5x plus 10y. And this is where, again, defining our variables is going to be extremely important. Okay, the question's asking us how much each cup of coffee was, how much each donut was. So everything dealing with our x is coffee. Okay, so x is going to be the cost of coffee. And then y, everything for y is dealing with donuts. So y is going to be the cost of your donut. All right. So notice the difference here. This one's set up differently because it gives you a total. So we have that in the total spot instead of the y like we did before. All right, so now going through and solving this, I would love to say, hey, just go and plug it in the calculator, right, like we did before. But if you look, these are not in slope-intercept form. So we need to do some work here to get them into slope-intercept form. So I want you to pause the video and then please get both of these equations into slope-intercept form. All right, guys, so here are your two equations. Y equals 3.3 minus a 2x and y equals 1.425 minus a 1/2 x. Again, please do not cut off the decimal in that second one. You got to keep the whole decimal or our answers aren't going to come out to be correct. All right, so again, you have two options here. You could go and graph it on a piece of paper, but again, y-intercepts are a little ugly. Not sure if you want to choose that option. Our other option is a calculator. So go through, pause the video, enter everything in the calculator, see if you can get an answer. All right, guys, so entering things in the calculator, y equals, you should have your two equations there. If you go and graph it, you can see where those two lines cross. Okay, so go to your second calculate, go down to number 5, press enter until it says intersection. So we get an intersection here of 1.25 comma 0.8. So let's talk about what that actually means in terms of this problem. So again, our solution was 1.25 comma 0.8. So the question here wants to know how much was each cup of coffee. So this is where, again, your variables, you define them. X is the cost of coffee. So we want to look at our x, y for our points. This is our x. So our answer here is actually $1.25 for 1 cup of coffee.